Story 1. I had a 2.5 hour conversation with a flat earther, and it was one of the highlights of the last decade for me. I had a list of questions I had always wanted to ask a flat earther. At the top of the list was checking Google Flights and Travelocity for flight times to routes that should take a very long time on a flat Earth. The first problem was that he did not have an official map we could use as a reference. Apparently there are many different flat Earth maps, so we settled on one he said was good enough. He had flown from the west coast to the east coast in about 5 hours, so we compared that route to 2 points on the flat Earth map that should take more than 25 hours, for example Brazil to South Africa. Online sources showed that flight took around 8 hours. After finding more examples, I asked whether all pilots and passengers on those flights were part of the conspiracy, since he claimed it was mainly perpetrated by the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. It was not the slam dunk counter I expected. He often replied, "I do not know," or "maybe the map is wrong." The concept seemed too confusing for him. I addressed other points showing the Earth is round and heard claims such as the sky being made of water, which he said explained why it is blue. I became frustrated by his inability to follow a logical train of thought without jumping to random tangents. It was fascinating. Then I found a point that really flummoxed him. He claimed the National Aeronautics and Space Administration receives billions of dollars because of the round Earth hoax, and that the moon landing and satellite launches were faked as money grabs. I asked why they would need to pretend the Earth is round. Could they not fake the moon landing and pretend to launch satellites from a flat Earth? What does the Earth's shape have to do with it? He had no answer, and the conversation ended. Story 2. Ask them what route the Japanese took when they attacked Pearl Harbor. Story 3. And square. What? Flat and square. Something you flat earthers want us all to believe. But we know better. You're part of big round. The square. Prove me wrong. Story 4. I handle conspiracy theorists by out-crazying them. They say, the Earth is flat. I say, the real Earth was eaten by the lizard people 500 years ago. Wake up, sheeple. Story 5. Ask them to define terms instead of disputing. For example, 1. Which city or town is nearest the center? 2. Which city or town is farthest from the center? 3. Along a straight line extended from the first 2 points to the opposite side, which location on that side is farthest? 4. What is the distance between the 2 farthest locations from the center? No flat earther can answer these questions. Insist that they do, or no debate is possible. Story 6. Ask them why, because whatever they are really after has nothing to do with their opinion of the shape of the Earth. Story 7. Prove it. Ask them to perform an experiment that would disprove the round Earth theory or prove the flat Earth theory. I once argued with a couple of flat earthers in a bar. What stopped them briefly was that they were showing me a flat Earth map and insisting I had been taught wrong. I asked whether they knew who had made the map. How do we know one of us was taught wrong and the other right? Both are relying on secondhand knowledge. Story 8. One-up them on crazy conspiracy nonsense. Say you are one of those people who believe the Earth is real. Gotcha. Keep it up. You are never going to convince someone who has tied their identity to a position that it is invalid. You might as well have some fun with it. Story 9. Guys like that don't believe that stuff either. What they want is validation that they are the smartest person in the room. It's narcissism. He wants to either upset you or make you agree just to end the conversation. To him, it means he has beaten you in some game. I knew guys like that too who said mankind has never been to the moon. There is no arguing with them. They are just idiots. Don't argue with them. They will drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. Story 10. Refuse to discuss the topic. Be polite or direct, whichever is more authentic or effective. Set a clear boundary. If the person refuses to respect that boundary, spend as little time with them as possible. Story 11. Do you think the edge of the world would be a good tourist spot? I do. I'm willing to bet if the Earth were flat, Disney would have monetized it by now. Story 12. You will not win an argument. You cannot reason someone into a conclusion they did not reach on their own. If you love and care for this person and want to continue the relationship, ignore it and change the subject. Let them believe the dumb things they do. If this person is an idiot you do not care about, then you can do whatever you like. Story 13. Okay. It is flat. I do not have time for a debate, and I have even less energy for one. Story 14. Have you asked this person what evidence they would need to believe that the earth is round? From there, it can become clear that they are so attached to the idea that the earth is flat that they are unlikely to accept any evidence. If they cannot accept any evidence, how can you trust them? You should emphasize that for their theory to hold, millions of people would need to be involved in a conspiracy. Think back to when the United States and Russia were in a space race. Do you think two countries that were ideologically opposed could keep such a lie? What would Russia or any country opposed to the United States gain by promoting the idea that the earth is round? Often this line of thinking descends into baseless conspiracies blaming groups of people. Hopefully your family member does not go down that route. Story 15. That is not really for debate. You might get a more revealing answer by asking how this person has gotten to this point, why it is important for them to believe that, and how it makes them feel. Try to find out what led them down this path. Story 16. Unless he knows an edge dragon who is willing to give you a tour, he is just yanking your chain. Story 17. Tell them that if it were flat, cats would have pushed everything off by now. Story 18. Neil deGrasse Tyson YouTube video. Story 19. One of the best things about growing older is my increased willingness to let other people be wrong. How is your day any different if this person thinks the earth is flat? Story 20. I don't. If you do not want to trust 1,000 years worth of human study proving the earth is round, then goodbye. Even Christopher Columbus, widely known as a colonizer and rapist, knew the earth was round. He thought it was oblong, which is not completely wrong, but it was still round. Even that fool knew it and believed it. That's the bar. If you are below that, I have nothing to say. You are not worth my time. Goodbye. Story 21. I became more animated about increasingly ridiculous conspiracy theories. I have a relative like this, and he eventually stopped because he thinks I'm the crazy one now, and all my sane relatives know I'm just throwing stuff in his face. Story 22. I prefer beat them at their own stupidity. Agree, then go off about the 4 elephants and the turtle carrying them. Congratulate them for being aware of the great Achuan. Then go nuts on beliefs. Stay serious. There is a whole lot of lore to pull from, or just make it up. Either way, frustrate them with your stupidity. Story 23. The first person to run to the edge of the earth wins. I'll give you a head start. Ready, set, go. Story 24. So what if the earth is flat? I still have to pay my bills. Story 25. 2,300 years ago, a Greek man named Eratosthenes proved the earth was round using 2 sticks, the sun, and mathematics. You have access to actual satellite data. Do not ignore it. Story 26. Arguing with an idiot just means there are 2 idiots in the room. Story 27. My brother thinks coronavirus disease 2019 was a hoax. Anytime it comes up, he says, what a waste of time that was. Looking for someone to blame. We do not, and the same conversation continues. You are wasting your time trying to debate these people. Watch YouTube videos of those who try to prove the earth is flat. They end up showing it is not flat and blame the instruments they used. Story 28. Sorry, I don't argue with moronic cunts. Go find drunk Uncle Jeff. He still believes he was subjected to an anal probe by redneck aliens. Story 29. The method I use to handle something similar, politics in my case, is to tell the family member that I am not interested in discussing it and that if they continue I will take that as my cue to leave. From then on, without fail, if they bring up politics I look around and say that it is time for me to go, and then I leave. If they actually want me around, they learn quickly not to bring up the subject. It took 2 to 3 times for this to work in my case. Story 30. If the earth were really flat, the cats would have pushed everything off the edge. Story 31. Fill a small spray bottle with water and spray them in the face every time they try to bring it up. Story 32. How do they think different time zones work on a flat earth? Story 33. Just laugh and say, "Oh, Terry, you and your flat earth," in a condescending voice. Swap Terry for their real name if you prefer. Story 34. I am in the space industry. I have photographs from space taken by cameras that I personally assembled and mounted on a satellite. Unfortunately, that is usually only enough to convince people who believe the Earth is flat that you are part of a scam or that you have been duped by some shady scheme to which you are not privy. If private companies want to pay me a six-figure sum to pull the wool over my eyes, that is not the worst thing. Story 35. Buy as many globes as you can find at yard sales. Put them everywhere. Story 36. You can't really convince someone who believes something like that using logic and rational arguments. You can, however, out-crazy them. Tell them that the truth is we live in a Matrix-style simulation and that the whole flat Earth thing is just something they made up to distract actual people from noticing how the map is stitched together. Or start by saying, well, actually, and then go into a long rant about hyperbolic geometry with negative Gaussian curvature and Bielo-Lobachevskian geometry, as if any of that explained why the universe and the Earth are not flat. Story 37. Tell them if the Earth were flat, cats would have pushed everything off by now. Story 38. Is this the only thing you ever talk about? Get a life, you dork. Story 39. Ultimately, they do not understand how gravity works and a flat Earth is simpler. I would not respond. It is pointless. Just say yes, dear. Whatever you believe, I am sure you are right. Smile and drop it. Story 40. The Earth cannot possibly be flat because all the cats in the world would have knocked everything over the edge by now. Do not bother debating the matter. Consider it a religious difference and let them be. It is not worth the effort to argue. They would need to know much more about the physical world and technology than they apparently do to change their minds. They are unlikely to believe you even if they understand some of it. They are not necessarily stupid, just uninformed. There was a time when this way of thinking was mainstream. It was not due to lack of intelligence but to lack of knowledge. We are all ignorant about something, and this is one of theirs. Story 41. I can easily prove to you that the Earth is spherical. Watch. Step outside and look at the house from 30 feet away. Then lock the doors. Story 42. Ask them to watch Professor Dave with you. Ask them to explain gravity. Why does Antarctica get 24 hours of sunlight? How do the seasons work? What is a day? Why can I see the Earth's curvature? When you see something very far away, why do you only see the top? Who benefits from claiming the Earth is a sphere? Why are all other visible planets, moons, and the sun round, yet we are an exception? That seems illogical. Story 43. Never have a battle of wits with a person who is unarmed. In other words, it is pointless to argue with an idiot. Story 44. I had a coworker who is convinced the Earth is flat. I asked for evidence. She said she did not have any, could not explain it, and that she just knew in her soul it was flat. Me, every celestial body is round. Why would the Earth be any different? Her, I do not know. I just know the Earth is flat. Me, what happens when ships and planes get to the edge? They cannot all be in on a conspiracy. Her, I do not know. I just know the Earth is flat. Me, why do pilots fly flight paths that are based on the curvature of the Earth? Her, I do not know. I just know the Earth is flat. Me, the spin of an object creates a spherical shape due to centripetal forces, which can be recreated in a lab. Her, then why cannot we see the curve of the Earth from where we are? Me, you can. Ships disappear over the horizon because of curvature, not because they fall off a ledge. Her, why cannot you see the curve in a plane? Me, you are not high enough. She walked away and said to stop making fun of her or she would report me to Human Resources. I asked, report me for what? Stating commonly known facts. Go ahead. Story 45. There is no convincing someone who has already ignored all of the evidence and school lessons. Story 46. Agree with him and tell him to make sure everyone knows. Encourage him to publish his proof on Facebook. Story 47. Ad hominem all the way. This has been disproven repeatedly. 5-year-olds know the Earth is not flat. You are not special and do not possess secret data. This has been a waste of my time. Story 48. If the Earth were flat, wouldn't the cats have pushed everything over the edge already? I would ask them to walk to the edge and take a picture. Story 49. Do not engage. The earth is not flat, but their brain is smooth. If you respond, you have already lost. Story 50. Do not debate. That makes it seem like their side has any ground. Ignore them. Story 51. We have spoken about this before. I disagree with you, and when you bring this up, it makes me think less of you. I hope you get the help you need. Story 52. Yes, you are right. Now let's have dinner. Don't argue with stupid people. You will lower yourself to their level, and they will win because they have more experience. Story 53. There is a 7-hour-long video on YouTube by Veritas that examines common flat Earth arguments and explains their thinking, as well as the known scientific evidence. You can offer it to them as something they may be interested in, or watch it together in chunks. Sadly, those who have gone deep down the rabbit hole do not seem able to escape easily. It is more of a cult than it might seem, offering a sense of belonging to a group led by some mentally unwell grifters. Story 54. Ask them to explain why cats have not knocked everything off the edge. Story 55. This was solved using basic math and human willpower. Eratosthenes, chief librarian of the Library of Alexandria, calculated the circumference of the Earth by measuring the distance between Alexandria and Syene and comparing the angles of the shadows cast by the sun on a vertical rod in each city at noon on the summer solstice. His result was within 1% of the true value. He lived from 276 to 195 before Common Era. Thank you, Carl Sagan, for teaching me this. Story 56. Never argue with a fool. People might not know the difference. Story 57. As my username might suggest, I'm involved in the skeptics community that spends a lot of time dealing with conspiracy theorists such as flat earthers. You won't win if you debate them. Flat earthers as a whole are obsessed with the topic, and much like chess, a less intelligent person with far more experience will generally beat a smarter person who is approaching it for the first or second time. The arguments most people can come up with on the fly are things they have heard before, and they will have answers for. They won't necessarily be the right answers, but they are convincing in the moment or at least difficult to disprove. What the skeptics community has learned over the last 20 years is that facts are not enough. They are necessary, but not sufficient. You need an alternative narrative they can accept. Flat Earth conspiracies cover an enormous array of topics. It is not the flat Earth idea that attracts people. It is the global conspiracy, the size of the lie, and the notion that an enormous apparatus is required to maintain it. You are not trying to convince them the world is round. You are trying to convince them that there is no malevolent, nearly all-powerful organization controlling everything, and that is much harder. My advice is do not engage. You are not going to convince them, and they are not going to change. You will only upset each other and the people around you. Story 58. Do not try. Someone who believes the Earth is flat ignores basic logic. You will be wasting your time. Story 59. The best way is to sit down with them and listen. Try to understand their theory and where they are coming from. Ask genuine questions about their theory. Once they feel listened to, they will open up and listen to you. You will be able to address exactly what they do not understand because you will have listened to them properly. Remember that you lose all influence over them if you tell them in any way that they are stupid for believing that. Story 60. If they kept bringing it up and would not let it go, I would say in front of our entire family, "No, I will not make out with you." Story 61. Flat Earth is made-up nonsense intended to distract from real issues. If it keeps you occupied, that is your choice, but please do not involve me. I will not explain what is really happening. You must figure that out for yourself. I am past the phase of following the crowd. Story 62. I agree. It's not flat like a pancake. It's more like a Belgian waffle, and those ridges suit him perfectly. Story 63. You say, "Okay, Karen, don't try to drive to California or you'll fall off." Story 64. Mark Twain said, "Never argue with an idiot. They will drag you down to their level and beat you with experience." Story 65. My response would be, "All right, sounds good. Take care." There is no point in debating. Acknowledge it and move on. If someone believes such a ridiculous falsehood, No amount of logic or reason will change a mind that refuses to see. It is better to keep your peace. Story 66. I usually answer with vague non-answers. The Earth is flat. You're right, we are on Earth. I have a few crazy relatives, mainly supporters of Make America Great Again, but not flat earthers. It is the only way I can handle conversations with them. I don't have the energy to argue in good faith anymore. Story 67. Yes, the moon would have to move at hyperspeed beneath the flat surface to return to the next night's rising point. Story 68. He scoffed. You believe Earth really exists? That's what the government wants you to think. Story 69. Shrug and say, I do not really know. I have never been to space to see the planet from afar and get that perspective. Have you? Then switch quickly to a different conspiracy theory that I can get behind and we can potentially bond over. Like, where is the Epstein list? Story 70. If the Earth were flat, corporations would offer trips to the edge as a tourist attraction. No one ever misses an opportunity to make a profit. Story 71. Ah, you're right, buddy. It sure is. They just want attention. Let's move on. Story 72. Our time on this planet, no matter its shape, is finite. I would love to have experiences and create memories with you that are fun and make us both smile. Story 73. Just say this is all a simulation anyway, so who cares? Story 74. It is flat. My brother fell off the edge back in 2004. Luckily, he had a parachute. Story 75. Interesting. Let's go see the edge, shall we? Come on. I bet there are all sorts of hotels along the edge. What an amazing sight it must be, kind of like the Grand Canyon or Victoria Falls. Instagram must be full of photos. How far is it from here? Are the edges an arc or straight lines? Where does the water go like a waterfall into space? How do we get the water back? Or are there big rows of mountains holding it all in? Should we pack food? No, I bet there are tons of restaurants. Which country is on the edge? Which city? Can you take a train or a car there? Or do we have to fly? Ooh, wouldn't dog sledding be fun? We would have to be careful that the dogs did not pull us over the side. How many people have died falling over the edge, do you think? I bet that is what happened to Jimmy Hoffa. What a great place to dump bodies. Is the moon flat too, like a big paper cutout tipped up for us to see? How about the sun? Do the sun and the moon go beneath us or just swing back and forth over the earth like a pendulum? What about fish, birds, reptiles, and mammals? Do they fall off the edge? How thick is the earth? What does the underside look like? Do we need any sort of safety gear for our trip? Oh, the whole edge must have railings by now. It is such a hot place for tourists. My grandmother once told us she tried to ride a horse there when she was a kid living in Canada. But the speckled hippos that lounged in the watering holes seemed too dangerous to get by if you really wanted to get close and have a good look. You know more about this than I do. You do the trip planning and I will spring for the food. I am so excited I could pee myself. How about you? Just act like a 4-year-old with them until they want to tell you to shut up. Story 76. I was mistaken. You are correct. Walk away from the idiot. Story 77. I overheard a flat earth discussion in a bar once. It was kind of fun to hear. My favorite discussion point was that if the earth were truly spinning at 1,000 miles per hour, everything would fly off into space. It left me pondering all the conspiracies with even less logical basis. Story 78. I'd call them a fucking moron and likely belittle them. I'm done with the science-denying nonsense. Story 79. Strangers or acquaintances? Ignore them. They are not worth my time. Family. I will tell them they are stupid, and I will do so loudly. Friends. I do not choose friends who are that stupid. Laughing out loud. Story 80. If the earth were flat, there would be tours to the edge. Story 81. Take a trip to the Great Lakes. Bring a telescope. You won't see the beach on the other side. Story 82. If the earth were flat, do you think some corporation would not turn the edge into a tourist trap? Story 83. Yes, you are correct. The unicorns and Bigfoots have already fallen off the edge. It's tragic. You need to let it be. Your family members are wrapped up in conspiracy theories and will not come around to reality in the near future. Story 84. Let's assume everything you say is true. Why would anyone be interested in hiding this? The effort required to keep the flat Earth truth hidden would have to be immense. Nations have been at war with each other and do not agree on almost anything, yet they would supposedly cooperate to present the Earth as round to the public. What is the motivation to make everyone think the Earth is round? The answer I got was, because the devil wants to trick everyone. It felt like he was making up the motivation on the spot and had never thought about it that way. It is better to just not debate with dumb fucks. Story 85. We are not going to agree on this, and I do not debate for entertainment. You will have to find someone else. They do not really believe the Earth is flat. They just want to be contrary and argue to have something to talk about with their flat earther buddies. It is something of a persecution fetish. Story 86. I would tell them, if the world were flat, cats would have knocked everything off the edge by now. Story 87. All you have to say is, why do flat earthers accept that every other planet has been observed to be round, but ours is the only one that is flat? Story 88. Go find the edge and take a selfie for us. Until then, stop peddling your shit around here. Story 89. So, what is on the opposite side of the Earth? Story 90. I just go along with it. I have found that people who believe things like this are 100% irrational and cannot be swayed. Story 91. Travel to the edge and take a selfie there. Then I will believe you. Story 92. If the Earth were really flat, cats would have pushed everything off the edge already. Story 93. At this point, it is not a fight you can win or a discussion you should have. Trying to argue your side will only leave you exasperated and angry. Instead, consider this. An indulgent or smug smile while agreeing with everything they say is very effective and usually makes them furious. If you want to annoy someone but give them nothing to go on, I recommend it. Saying, "You're so right, sweetie," while they know you consider them foolish hits harder than a reasoned argument. Story 94. Uncontrolled laughter. You cannot debate people who believe things that are clearly untrue and will not budge on any point. Laugh at them until they go away. Story 95. I support them. I tell them I have never seen a video from the far side of the world. If they went there and recorded it, they could be the first and become famous for it. The world would lose its mind at how right you are. It would be like having definitive proof that God is or is not real. Story 96. Assure them that if the world were truly flat, cats would have pushed everything over the side by now. Story 97. They are trolling you to drive you crazy. This is a well-worn Trump cult tactic, so you will not notice they are stealing the inheritance. Story 98. You and others have lived your lives, accomplished much, and have run into individual challenges. How has the shape of the Earth affected any of that? Sometimes questions like that reveal a person's priorities. Whether the Earth is round, flat, or another shape, it has not greatly affected me or the life I have led. This is a battle I choose not to participate in. Story 99. I would say, that's nice, and move on to a different topic or person. Story 100. You can take some of these people to Antarctica during the 24-hour sun, and they would still deny the Earth is an oblate spheroid. I don't debate them. Story 101. Yeah, right. It travels through space, held up by 4 elephants standing on a space turtle's back. Story 102. Make the arrangements to travel to the edge or go away. Put your money where your mouth is. I do not believe anything you say. And do not give me an excuse like the government is protecting it. Story 103. Blatantly and aggressively ignore them. Act as if they do not exist. Story 104. I would tell them to get in the sea and swim out until they can no longer see land. Story 105. I would enjoy refuting every argument they make and making them appear foolish. Story 106. You can't use logic to convince someone of something they did not use logic to believe. Just say, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And honestly, it is shocking you fell for that bullshit. I'm really disappointed in you. If they are in public with you, introduce them as a flat earther before anything else. This is my cousin. He believes the Earth is flat. His name is Steve. The only way to get through to them is to show how ridiculous they appear to others. Story 107. I'm not interested in discussing an impossibility with you. You will not be able to convince them otherwise if they have convinced themselves already. Story 108. Tell them to walk to the end of the earth and find out. They will either fall off the end, proving they are right, or they will realize they are a dumbass when they loop back around. Of course, the latter will happen, and it will give you a break from their bullshit while they are gone. Story 109. Ask them if they are just too poor to fly on an airplane. Story 110. There is nothing to debate. Of course it is flat. Move on with your life and focus on conversations that matter. There is no need to convince or correct every single idiot on earth. Story 111. I cannot help edit content that threatens self-harm or suicide. Safer alternative phrasings for Azure text-to-speech. Tell them that if they keep talking about it, you will step away from the conversation. Tell them that if they continue, you will leave the area. Tell them that if the discussion continues, you need to end the conversation. If you are thinking about harming yourself or feel unsafe, please seek help now. If you are in the United States, call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you are in the United Kingdom, contact Samaritans at 116 123. If you are elsewhere, contact your local emergency services or a local crisis line. If you are in immediate danger, call emergency services now. Are you safe right now? Would you like help finding local resources? Story 112. I respond the same way to anyone in the debate me crowd. I am neither your teacher nor your dad. If you have not figured out something so patently obvious on your own, I will not waste my time pointing out irrefutable evidence you have already rejected. Leave me out of your attention-seeking behavior. Story 113. Flat Earth is a farce that the Russians invented in the 1960s to cause Americans to miscalibrate our space instruments. Real Americans know that we actually live on a superplanet. Don't explain until he asks what that is. Superplanets are planets that are so large that, despite being perfectly round, there is no way to measure their size. Earth is so large that all our experiments prove that it's flat because the one spot on the ice wall that the sun has melted is flat. With the exception of the part we live on, the entire Earth is covered in ice, but the sun melts just enough for us to live on. If that's too elaborate, you can keep it simple and tell him that the Earth is cylindrical. How else can you see the curvature and still fall off the edge? Story 114. The Earth is actually the concave surface of a bowl, but appears flat due to a massive lens that distorts our vision. Existence will come to an end through a series of asteroid strikes dubbed the Great Pestling. Story 115. For about $400 you can buy a weather balloon and a GoPro camera. The debate is over. Story 116. If you don't want to engage, just say you might very well think that and leave it at that. Story 117. Point out this simple physical fact. When you walk toward a large building or mountain, you see the top of the structure first. The answer is always the top because the world is round. If it were flat, you would see the entire object growing larger as you get closer. People will likely double down because they enjoy being contrarian, but that is no reason to avoid presenting the facts. Story 118. Just agree, change the subject, and move on with your life. Story 119. If the Earth were flat, the cats would have pushed everything off by now. Story 120. Say that you no longer wish to debate the topic and that you require trial by combat. Story 121. Do not bother. The brainwashing required to convince them that the Earth is flat makes them resistant to any evidence. It will only turn into an argument. If you do not want to fall out with them, do not enter into a debate. You know you are right. Leave it at that. Story 122. Eratosthenes proved that the Earth is round and calculated its circumference around 200 years before the Common Era. He used two cities that lay nearly on the same north-south line and were about 500 miles apart. At local noon on the summer solstice, he placed vertical sticks in the ground at both locations and measured the lengths of their shadows. The difference in shadow angles was about 7.2 degrees, roughly 1/50th of a full circle. Using that fraction of a full circle and the distance between the cities, he calculated the Earth's circumference. The key evidence that the Earth is curved is simply that the shadow angles differ. The experiment was done at the summer solstice, when the sun was directly overhead at one location, which helped eliminate effects from the Earth's tilt. Story 123. Life won't get better if we all believe it's flat. It wouldn't matter much even if it were. Let him know you want to have a good time together, not argue all day about the planet. Story 124. Logically, a flat Earth makes little sense. For example, is the Earth square or a single flat plane? Where would someone fall off? Ask flat Earth proponents where they think the edges are. Is the moon round? On nights when we can see Mars, is it round? If those two objects are round, why isn't the Earth round? Story 125. Their minds are warped by hours, days, and weeks interacting with other idiots who make them feel special. Grifters use the gullible to gather influence, like a club. Your 3-minute reality-based conversation will not make them feel special and will be overshadowed by their instant return to the delusion. I spent a couple of years interacting with conspiracy theorists about chemtrails, flat Earth, and coronavirus disease 2019 vaccines because I wanted to understand it. It is really like listening to an 8-year-old talk about Minecraft. They like their delusions better than the shitty world. There is nothing you can do. Story 126. Do not engage when others try to start an argument. If they begin that conversation, stare at them and say nothing. Story 127. I could never take them seriously or argue with someone that stupid. It's not worth my energy. Story 128. I would agree with them. It is not worth my time to debate idiots. Story 129. Whenever someone says something crazy and I don't want to debate, I give them a blank stare, nod, say okay, and walk away. Story 130. Pick a flat Earth convention on another continent. One of you heads west to get there, the other heads east. If one does not arrive, it proves the existence of the Great Ice Wall. A 50-50 chance of life or death to prove flat Earth beliefs. Story 131. I bet you think the sun and moon are real too, do you not? It is more fun to outsmart them, but you have to keep it simple. If you do not, then they will know you are faking it. Story 132. It depends on your goal. If you want to convince someone they are wrong, engage them in a Socratic discussion of their beliefs. Show genuine interest and ask questions that lead them to consider the consequences of those beliefs and how they compare with reality. If you want to try with less effort, play Simandan videos at full volume whenever they are in the room. If you do not want to discuss it, change the subject firmly when they bring it up and refuse to engage in a debate. Hand them a ball and ask if they would like to bounce it. The sad truth is that once someone concludes that billions of people have maintained a conspiracy for thousands of years, despite all physical evidence to the contrary, there is not much you can do. I used to work next to someone who genuinely believed this, and facts never altered his beliefs. Story 133. I would probably be unkind and tell them they were foolish. Then I would make fun of them until they felt so bad about themselves that they never brought it up again. I could not have any patience for that kind of intentional ignorance. Story 134. Let that person believe the Earth is flat. Why does it matter? You can believe whatever you want. They can too. It is not as if their belief will give you leprosy. Their belief does not affect yours. So live your life and go about your day. Story 135. Show a video of people who believe the Earth is flat spending thousands of dollars on experiments that ultimately demonstrate the Earth is a sphere. Story 136. You have the right to your opinion. Now change the conversation to a topic you both enjoy discussing. Story 137. They can see that the sun and moon are round, and images of the solar system show that all planets are round. Why would we be different? Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.